I am what some people would consider an all-rounder. So I used to do a lot of things. I was very, very involved in everything. I did music. I am classically trained, used to sing opera, as well as at school being head girl and being involved in all those things. I used to help a lot of people, tutor a lot of people. When this happened to me, I was actually partway through, more than halfway through my third year of medical school, which is a clinical aspect. The day it happened was just a normal day. Just a normal day, you know. You wake up, you get changed, and I actually didn't want to go to the hospital that day because we've been working all weekend, and it's actually my roommate Letitia. She's the one who said to me, "No, you have to come. We have ward rounds." And you know, I had been on the ward rounds. I was a little bit irritable. That's all I remember, because I hadn't eaten breakfast. And I took off my glasses because I was having this terrible headache behind my eyes. I figured that it was just because I hadn't eaten. And then as I came down the stairs, I just had this faint feeling. I was like, you know, this is because you didn't eat. And I just saw the people ahead of me. And I said, guys, I'm going to faint. And then I just saw them running towards me in slow-mo as I'm sliding down the wall. And then, you know, how you have it when you see in movies when people are collapsing in this kind of slow-mo, their head almost hits the floor and somebody catches them. That's literally what happened. And then all I could feel was myself being moved backwards and forwards. And they were, you know, putting in IV lines, taking off blood to try to find out what had happened, you know. And then suddenly I had my first seizure. And then after that one started, it just wouldn't stop. Like, they would come in sets of, you know, 5, 6, 7 of them. And every time I would lapse into this unconsciousness and then wake up, have a somewhat lucid conversation, casual conversation, and then go straight back into it. And I don't remember any of these conversations. So when I first woke up and I was in ICU, they were asking me a lot of questions, I guess, to test the degree of my neurological impairment. And I couldn't remember that I was a medical student and what year I was in and why I was at that specific place and what rotation I was in. I couldn't remember any of these things. And it took when my friend, who was the same person who had convinced me to go to the hospital on that day, when she came into the ICU to visit me for the first time when I was awake, because she had visited me multiple times when I was unconscious, when I saw her face, that's what made the differences. At that point, it's like time stood still and everything filled in backwards. You know, I remembered that I'm a medical student. I remembered why I was in Jamaica. I remembered all the things, and up to that point, I couldn't have remembered any of that. And what really helped me was the fact that my mom had written down a diary of everything. You know, oh, today they tried putting you on this medication. Unfortunately, you reacted and you had this many seizures, but the frequency seems to be, you know, decreasing. The frequency seems to be decreasing and stuff like that. She used to write those things almost like a monologue, and I was able to then sit back and read and try and understand what was happening, and able to grasp for the first time the severity of what I went through. Because obviously when I came out the other side, you know, I was happy and laughing and like wondering, why am I here? Like, what on earth happened to me and things like that. But my recovery being complicated by the fact that I ended up relapsing, going back into having multiple seizures, ending up back in ICU, waking up 2 days later again, wondering what happened 2 days ago, you know. And again, people still not able to give me the answers that I was so much wanting at that time. You know, what is causing this? What's the point of it? How am I going to recover? Am I ever going to be normal again? Am I ever going to be the same? Those things were at the forefront of my mind at that point. But nobody could give me the answers because nobody knew. So neurorehabilitation is a very hard and grueling process. Nothing is as hard as that was, because for me, as for many people who have been through encephalitis, the hardest part is the cognitive aspect, especially trying to get back to somewhere that you were close to where you were before. If you think about having me as somebody, as a medical student, reading journals and churning out journals every single night, getting through multiple textbooks and such, and then being able to not even finish a page of a children's book. It was such a big change. The exhaustion you get from just reading a sentence was unreal. You know, I personally I'm not ashamed to say I struggled with depression, struggled with post-traumatic stress after. I think the biggest challenges for me were trying to adjust to asking for help. That was really, really hard for me. Small things like bathing, dressing, feeding yourself, looking after yourself generally, combing your hair, things like that. It was immensely difficult from the point of view of being this independent person who could, try everything and try do everything, to literally having to ask for somebody to help to feed you because you couldn't do it for yourself. So that was very, very difficult. My mum always reminds me, I used to say some horrible things to her, not out of the meaning to be mean, but more I was very blunt, I was very frank and honest, but I wasn't speaking in the same way, and so I'd see her face crumple up like she's about to cry, and I'd be like, why are you going to cry? Because for me, I couldn't comprehend why she was so hurt by what I was saying. From that, in terms of my relationship with my friends, I had a lot of resentment in the very start, which I'm sure many people do who have been through any kind of brain injury, because people are living the life that you lived before and you feel very left out. And part of that is that you socially isolate yourself because you're unable to relate to people in the same way that you did before. I had to go into a year group where I knew nobody. Well, I knew a few people, but knew nobody. And every 5 weeks you change rotation. So every 5 weeks there was a new set of people. And that, as a person recovering from a brain injury, you're having to remember faces, you're having to remember names. Plus you're trying to study. Plus you're trying to recall everything that you knew up to that point. I have 3 years worth of banking on knowledge, and then to try and access that, I can only liken it to having a filing cabinet, but you have a bunch of keys and you can't open it. And for me, it was important trying to find my way to open that cabinet and being able to get back at the files which I had already created for myself. So it was extremely exhausting, but I was surrounded by a lot of family support and a lot of support of my friends as well, which allowed me to be able to go back. And I think once I got over the hurdle of thinking, oh, I'm never going to be like how I was before, I'm never going to be successful, I'm never going to be this high achieving person, by stepping away from that and saying, okay, yeah, I may not be the same person, but I need to have a new journey, that allowed me to then be able to excel. It's not impossible. So anybody who's trying to recover and you think, oh, this is how I was before, everything was so easy, it's so important to just celebrate the small victories and take everything day by day, and that you'll be able to see in little to no time, look how far I've come in the last week, look how far I've come in the last month or the last year. Even when you think you're not really going anywhere. It may not come as easy again, but it doesn't mean it's impossible.
Hi guys, I'd just like to say thank you for all your love and support. It's really been lovely to hear all your messages when I'm here in the hospital. I know we'll get through this because we're a strong family. So, love you.